My brother slammed me into a wall during a dinner argument. I woke up weeks later and did something none of them expected. You think you're so righteous now? Jude's face hovered inches from mine, his hand gripping my sweater. Say it again. I said Dad would be ashamed of what you've become, I repeated, keeping my voice steady even though my shoulder still throbbed from where he'd shoved me earlier. The sound that followed wasn't only a slam. It was the sickening crack of bone hitting plaster, and then everything went black. My brother slammed me into a wall over an argument. I woke up weeks later. Hi, I'm Marjorie. Today I'm sharing my story. But before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Growing up, Jude was the kind of big brother everyone wanted. 5 years older, he taught me to ride my bike, helped with algebra, and stood up for me whenever things got rough. That's what made what happened later so much harder to accept. I was 26 at the time, working as a dental hygienist at a small family practice in suburban Cleveland. Jude had just turned 31 and was doing well as a regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company. We stayed close throughout college and early careers, having dinner every Tuesday with Dad at our childhood home. Mom had passed away 3 years earlier from a stroke, and those dinners became our way of holding on to family routines. Dad, at 62, was struggling more than he admitted. The house needed repairs he couldn't afford, and I'd noticed him wearing the same worn-out jacket through winter, refusing to spend money on himself. That Tuesday in March, I finally brought it up over meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Dad, I've been thinking, I said, setting down my fork. What if I moved back in for a while? I can help with utilities and the upkeep. Dad's eyes brightened behind his glasses. Marjorie, sweetheart, I couldn't ask that of you. You're not asking, I said. I'm offering. My roommate's moving to Portland anyway. Jude set down his glass hard enough to rattle the ice. Absolutely not. The whole room froze. Dad and I both stared at him. Excuse me, I said. He needs to sell this place, not depend on you so he can live beyond his means. Jude snapped. A vein pulsed at his temple. I've been telling him for months. Sell the house. Move into one of those nice retirement communities. This sentimentality is ridiculous. Sentimentality? I felt heat rising in my chest. This is our home, Jude. Where? Mom? Mom's gone, Marjorie. His voice was flat and cold. This house won't bring her back. Dad flinched like he'd been hit. I stood, my chair scraping across the linoleum. What is wrong with you? Jude stood too, all 6'2" of him. He kept himself in shape, always at the gym between meetings. What's wrong with me? He fired back. I'm the only one thinking clearly. Do you know what this place is worth? He could live comfortably for the rest of his life. He is sitting right here, Dad said quietly, but neither of us heard him anymore. This isn't about money, I said. It's about family. It's about keeping. Keeping what? Jude cut in. Your childhood bedroom? Grow up, Marjorie. What? His face had turned the same shade of furious red he'd get when we were kids, and he didn't get his way. Well, at least I'm not trying to push our father into a facility just so I can cash out his equity, I snapped. The accusation hung in the air like a lit match. Jude's face went from red to purple. Take that back. Why? Did it hit too close? I folded my arms. I've seen how you look at this place like you already own it. What's the plan? Dad sells, and suddenly you need a loan for that lakefront cabin your wife keeps posting about online. You little. Jude stepped around the table toward me. Dad stood, hands shaking. Kids, please, don't do this. But Jude didn't look at him. Marjorie is about to learn what happens when she runs her mouth, he growled. What are you going to do, Jude? Push me around like when we were kids? Real mature for a 31-year-old. I'm warning you. Dad would be ashamed of what you've become. I said it calmly, on purpose. And it hit. Jude lunged, grabbing my sweater with both hands, breath hot with whiskey he'd been drinking since he arrived. You think you're so righteous now? His fist clenched. Say it again. I said Dad would be ashamed of what you've become, I repeated. The next sound was bone-meeting plaster. And then, nothing. I learned the rest from Dad and the police. Jude had slammed me with so much force my head went through the dining room wall. The angle was terrible. My skull fractured, and I collapsed, blood spreading across Mom's favorite rug from Vermont. Dad called 911 while Jude froze, staring at me like he couldn't comprehend what he'd done. The paramedics said I was lucky to be alive. The impact caused a severe traumatic brain injury with intracranial bleeding. I was rushed into emergency surgery and fell into a coma for 3 weeks. During those weeks, life didn't pause. Jude was arrested that night for aggravated assault. Dad put up the house, the same one Jude insisted he should sell, as collateral for Jude's bail. The irony was obvious to everyone. My boyfriend Alex practically lived at the hospital. When I finally woke up, he was there, exhausted, unshaven, still wearing the Ohio State hoodie I'd bought him. "Hey," I croaked, my throat dry. He burst into tears and hit the nurse call button repeatedly. "Oh my God, Marjorie. Oh my God." The next hours were a blur of tests, lights, and questions about what I remembered. The answer was almost nothing. Everything from that dinner onward was gone, replaced by migraines and double vision. Dr. Rodriguez, my neurologist, didn't sugarcoat things. "You're fortunate," she said. "The surgery went well, but recovery will be long. The injury affected your speech, memory, and motor functions. With therapy, we expect major progress." Alex squeezed my hand. "But full recovery isn't guaranteed," she added. The word permanent hit harder than Jude ever had. I spent 2 more weeks in the hospital, then 3 months in inpatient rehabilitation at Cleveland Heights Recovery Center. As a dental hygienist, I understood the purpose behind each exercise, but doing them was a completely different challenge. My hands shook while trying to hold a toothbrush. Words got scrambled between my mind and mouth. Even walking to the bathroom drained me. Dad visited every day, looking older each time. Legal bills were piling up along with my medical costs. Jude's attorney was pushing for a plea deal, 2 years in prison and 3 years of probation. The prosecutor wanted 5. "I'm sorry," Dad said one afternoon as I squeezed a stress ball from occupational therapy. "I should have stopped it. I should have seen it coming." "Not your fault," I managed, frustrated by how much work each word took. "He's my son too," Dad whispered. "I failed both of you." Jude never visited. His wife, Vanessa, showed up once. She stood in the doorway like she was afraid to step inside, clutching her designer purse. "Jude wanted me to tell you he's sorry," she said, not looking at me. "This whole situation has been very hard on him." Alex let out a sharp laugh. "Hard on him? Are you serious?" Vanessa's face reddened. "He could lose everything. His job, his freedom." "Get out," I said. My voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. "Get out." She left quickly, her heels echoing down the hallway. The trial was set for September, 6 months after the assault. By then, I had finished rehab and was living with Alex since I couldn't manage alone. My recovery had leveled off. I could walk without help and speak clearly most of the time, but the headaches were constant, and my short-term memory was unreliable. I relied on lists and reminders to function day to day. I couldn't return to work. The precision required for dental hygiene was beyond what I could handle. My hands still trembled, my depth perception was off, and I couldn't risk injuring a patient. The practice held my position for 3 months, then had to let me go. I understood, but it still hurt. Jude's lawyer tried multiple times to convince me to drop the charges. He even came to Alex's apartment one humid August evening. "Miss Collins, your brother wants to make this right," he said, his expensive suit unbothered by the heat. "Full coverage of your medical bills, lost wages, and pain and suffering. We're talking mid-6 figures in exchange for—" Alex crossed his arms. He knew where this was going. "Dropping the criminal charges and resolving this privately." I thought about the months of therapy, the career I'd lost, the constant pain behind my eyes. I thought about Dad putting up his house for bail, and I thought about accountability. No deal. "Miss Collins, please be reasonable. A conviction helps no one. Think about your family." "My family ended the moment he put me through a wall," I said. "Leave." The trial was exhausting. Jude's attorney painted me as the aggressor, the ungrateful younger sister who provoked an unfortunate reaction. They brought up every childhood disagreement, every teenage argument, trying to frame it as a pattern of mutual conflict. But the medical evidence was overwhelming. Photos of the hole in the wall, my blood on the floor, x-rays of my fractured skull. My neurologist testified about the permanent damage and the likelihood I'd never practice dental hygiene again, along with the day-to-day challenges I would face moving forward. Dad testified too, his voice shaking as he described the incident. "It wasn't a fight," he said. Marjorie never raised a hand. Jude just snapped. The prosecutor played the 911 call, Dad's panicked voice begging for help, saying I wasn't breathing properly, that there was so much blood. I hadn't heard it before. Alex held my hand while I cried quietly in the courtroom. Jude took the stand on the third day. He wore a conservative suit, hair neatly cut, looking every bit the polished businessman, except for the ankle monitor visible beneath his pant leg. His story had changed. Now, his story had shifted. Now, Jude claimed he hadn't meant to hurt me, that he only acted out of fear for Dad's well-being, and the situation got out of hand. He insisted he simply pushed me harder than he realized. The prosecutor questioned him closely. So you're saying your sister's skull fractured because you misjudged your strength? Jude swallowed hard. I didn't intend for any of this. I was overwhelmed. I'd been trying to handle things alone since Mom passed. The jury didn't respond. They had already seen the medical reports, photos, and expert testimony. Closing arguments were tense. Jude's lawyer emphasized his clean record, strong career, and remorse. The prosecution focused on the severity of my injuries and the permanent consequences I faced. They described how easily the incident could have killed me. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When they returned, the courtroom went silent. On the count of aggravated assault causing serious physical harm, we find the defendant guilty. Dad let out a shaky breath. Alex squeezed my hand. Jude stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. The sentencing took place a month later. The judge reviewed everything carefully. The medical records, the ongoing impact on my daily life, and the way the incident unfolded. Mr. Collins, the judge said, your actions resulted in irreversible harm. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a violent response during a family argument. Jude received 4 years in state prison, followed by 2 years of probation. He didn't look at me as he was led away. After the sentencing, people kept asking me if I felt relieved. The truth was complicated. Justice had been served, but nothing about my life felt the same. I had lost my career, my independence, and the brother I once trusted. Dad struggled too. His health declined under the weight of stress, guilt, and financial strain. We sold the house months later, not because Jude demanded it, but because the legal fees and expenses made it impossible to keep. Alex and I moved into a smaller rental closer to my therapy center. He supported me through everything: doctor appointments, memory exercises, and the emotional fallout that came with each setback. Over time, progress was slow but steady. My speech improved, my balance returned, and the headaches became more manageable. I still relied on reminders and lists, but I learned to adapt. One evening, months after the trial, Dad and I sat together at his new condo. You know, he said quietly, your strength through all this reminds me so much of your mother. That meant more to me than anything else. I realized then that my life wouldn't return to what it was, but it wasn't over either. I had survived a moment that should have ended everything. I had stood up for myself, even when pressured to stay silent. And I had made sure the truth was heard. My story didn't end with revenge or bitterness. It continued with rebuilding, recovery, and choosing the people who truly stood by me. I don't know if Jude and I will ever speak again. Maybe time will change things. Maybe not. But I do know this. I protected myself. I protected my future. And I refused to let violence be brushed aside as a family mistake. That's something I'll never regret. Jude insisted that I had pushed him first, threatened him, and made him fear for his safety. He claimed he never intended to harm me that severely. He even managed a few tears as he said, "Marjorie is my little sister. I love her." But cross-examination dismantled his version. Security camera footage from Dad's neighbor showed me arriving calmly, holding a casserole dish Alex had prepared. Phone records revealed that Jude had been texting Vanessa all evening about finally convincing Dad to sell the house. His claim that I had threatened him unraveled when the prosecutor explained the physical evidence. My body was thrown backward, not forward, which contradicted his account of me advancing on him. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before reaching a verdict: guilty of aggravated assault resulting in serious bodily injury. The judge, noting the severity of my injuries and Jude's lack of genuine remorse, sentenced him to 4 years in state prison. Jude's face turned pale at the announcement. Vanessa cried loudly, mascara streaking down her face. When they escorted him away in handcuffs, he finally looked at me for the first time since that night and said, "I hope you're happy." But I wasn't. How could I be happy knowing my brother was going to prison, that our family was fractured, and that I woke up each day with headaches and struggled to remember basic tasks? What I did feel was a sense of closure. Justice had been delivered. The fallout was immediate. Jude's company fired him the day after the conviction since assaulting a family member violated their conduct policies. Within a month, Vanessa filed for divorce and moved back to her parents' home in Connecticut. She no longer wanted any association with the Collins name. With Jude incarcerated and unable to work, their home went into foreclosure. The lakefront cabin he'd once hoped to buy never happened. Instead, most of his assets went toward legal fees and the civil settlement for my injuries. During this period, Dad and I grew closer. I did move back home, not only to help with expenses, but because we needed each other. He supported me through my rehabilitation, reminded me about my medications, and drove me to appointments when the headaches made it unsafe for me to drive. One evening, while we watched Jeopardy, something simple enough for my recovering brain, he told me, "I'm proud of you for standing up for what's right. Your mother would be too." Alex and I got engaged that Christmas. We kept it small at Dad's house. Alex had been steady and supportive throughout everything, never making me feel like a burden even when I forgot our anniversary twice during my recovery. My rehabilitation continued gradually. Eventually, I found work as a medical insurance coordinator. The role was less physical, had flexible hours, and allowed me to use structured systems my occupational therapist helped me develop to manage cognitive challenges. It wasn't the career I'd planned, but it paid the bills and let me support people navigating the same healthcare system that had supported me. The remote nature of the job was ideal. Some days my hands shook too much to type, and other days the headaches were too intense for screen time. But I could pace myself and still be productive. I'd pushed him first, threatened him, made him fear for his safety. That's what he claimed. He said he never meant to hurt her that badly, even forcing out a few tears. "Marjorie is my younger sister," he insisted. He loved her. But the cross-examination dismantled everything. Security footage from Dad's neighbor showed me arriving calmly, holding a casserole dish Alex had prepared. Phone records revealed Jude had been texting Vanessa all evening about finally convincing Dad to sell. His story that I'd threatened him first collapsed when the prosecutor explained the physics. I'd been thrown backward, not forward, which would have been the case if I had been advancing on him. The jury took 4 hours to reach a decision. Guilty of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury. Citing the seriousness of the injuries and Jude's lack of remorse, the judge gave him 4 years in state prison. Jude's face drained when the verdict was read. Vanessa burst into loud tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks. As officers led him out in handcuffs, he looked at me for the first time since that night. "I hope you're happy," he said. I wasn't. How could I be pleased knowing my brother was going to prison, our family was broken, and I woke up each day with headaches and ended each night trying to remember basic tasks? But I felt relief that justice had been done. The fallout came quickly. Jude's company fired him the day after the conviction. Assaulting family members violated their conduct policy. Vanessa filed for divorce within a month and moved back to her parents' home in Connecticut. She wanted nothing to do with the Collins name anymore. With Jude in prison and unable to earn, their home went into foreclosure. The lake house he planned to build never happened. Instead, everything went toward legal bills and the settlement from my civil case. Dad and I became closer during everything. I moved back home, partly to help with expenses, but also because we truly needed each other. He helped me through daily exercises, reminded me to take my medications, and drove me to appointments when the headaches made driving unsafe. "I'm proud of you," he told me one night while we watched Jeopardy, something simple that didn't strain my injured brain. "You stood up for what was right. Your mother would be proud too." Alex and I got engaged that Christmas, a small celebration at Dad's house. He had been my steady support through everything, never wavering, never making me feel like a burden. Even when I forgot our anniversary twice, he stayed patient. My recovery moved slowly. I found a job as a medical insurance coordinator, less physical, with flexible hours. My occupational therapist helped me build systems to manage the mental strain. It wasn't the career I had planned, but it paid the bills and allowed me to guide others through the same medical system that had saved me. Working remotely helped. Some days my hands shook too badly to type, other days the headaches made screens unbearable. But I worked at my own pace, took breaks when needed, and still felt useful. Jude served 3 years of his 4-year sentence, released early for good behavior. Dad visited him monthly. I didn't. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. He moved to Phoenix afterward and found a job selling insurance, last I heard. We don't speak. Sometimes Dad brings him up carefully, watching my reaction. I don't hate my brother, but I can't forgive him. Not for the assault. Rage can be momentary, even if it's inexcusable, but for lying about it, for trying to portray me as the aggressor, for never offering a sincere apology. That destroyed any chance of reconciliation. The house Jude wanted Dad to sell is still standing. Dad and I repaired it together, me holding flashlights, sorting screws when my hands trembled too much. We repainted the dining room, patched the wall, replaced Mom's rug. It's more than a building. It's proof that some things hold value beyond money. My headaches are manageable now, 4 years later. I still have difficult days when words slip away or my hands won't cooperate, but I've built a life that works around those limits. Alex and I were married last spring in Dad's backyard, under the maple tree Mom planted when Jude and I were children. Jude wasn't invited. Vanessa unexpectedly sent a card with congratulations and an apology for her behavior in the hospital. I appreciated the sentiment, even though it came years too late. Sometimes I wonder what Jude thinks about when he's alone. Does he relive that night the way I do? Does he understand that his attempt to control Dad's assets cost him everything? His job, his marriage, his freedom, and his family? The irony is clear. He wanted Dad to cash out, to reduce everything to numbers and property value. Instead, his own choices forced his life into something smaller. From executive to ex-con, from a suburban home to a studio apartment, from family gatherings to distance. I've learned to celebrate small wins, finishing a yoga session without shaking, remembering an entire conversation, or getting through a day without pain medication. They're not the achievements I once imagined, but they belong to me, earned through long therapy and determination. The brain injury took a great deal, my career path, my independence, my belief that family ties were unbreakable. But it also clarified who truly mattered. Alex stayed through every challenge. He held my hand during endless medical appointments, learned to read my expression when speech was difficult, and proposed knowing our future would look different from what we once pictured. Dad mortgaged his home for bail, stood by me through the trial and recovery, and never made me feel like I was asking too much, even when I needed help with tasks most adults take for granted. Friends adapted to my new limits without treating me as less capable. Sarah, from work, visited weekly with magazines and updates. My college roommate Christine flew in twice from Seattle to help Dad with renovations. Our neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, brought soup every Sunday, never asking questions on the days when I struggled. And Jude revealed himself as well, just not in the way he intended. When challenged, he chose anger instead of conversation, lies instead of honesty, and financial gain over family. The brother who once taught me to ride a bike was gone, replaced by someone who viewed our childhood home only as potential equity. People sometimes tell me I should forgive him, that holding on to anger only harms me. Maybe there's truth in that. But forgiveness requires genuine regret, and Jude has never offered a real apology. Not for the assault, not for blaming me, not for trying to escape the consequences. His prison sentence delivered justice, but the life he lives now, that's the result of his own choices. Every job application that asks about criminal history, every date who searches his name and finds the conviction, every old coworker who avoids him, those are natural outcomes. I have no desire for revenge. His actions created their own consequences. He pushed me into a wall, but in the process, he dismantled his own life. The wall in Dad's house has been repaired. You'd never know what happened there. But Jude's reputation, his relationships, and his future aren't as easily fixed. Some damage stays. I've become a kind of advocate. I speak at brain injury support groups, sharing my experience and offering encouragement to others working through their recoveries. It gives me purpose, a way to turn something painful into something useful. Last month, a woman approached me after one of my talks, crying. My brother did something similar, she said quietly. I've been thinking about dropping the charges, God, but after hearing you, I realize I don't need to protect him from his actions. I hugged her. You deserve justice, and so does he. The kind that comes with responsibility, and maybe growth. Sometimes that's exactly how it should be. Dad turned 66 last month. We celebrated with chocolate cake made from Mom's recipe in the same kitchen where everything fell apart 4 years earlier. Alex came, along with Sarah and Mrs. Kowalski. We laughed, shared stories, and Dad didn't mention Jude once. But later, when everyone had gone home, I found him standing in the dining room, looking at the wall we repaired together. You ever think about him? I asked quietly. Every day, Dad said softly. He's still my son, but he's not the boy I raised. No, I agreed. He's not. Do you think he'll ever understand what he threw away? Dad asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. I think he knows. But knowing and accepting are different. Jude always struggled with that second part. Dad nodded slowly. Your mother used to say the same thing about him. She'd say Jude knows what's right, but his pride gets in the way of doing it. It was the clearest explanation I'd heard in years. Pride. That was the core of it. Pride made him see Dad's home as a financial burden, not a place full of memories. Pride made him react violently when I challenged him. Pride made him lie in court. And pride is likely what keeps him from picking up the phone now to say the words I know he'll never say. I'm sorry. I've started writing down the memories I still have, the good ones from before. Jude teaching me to swim at Lake Erie. Family road trips to Niagara Falls. The time he stood up to a bully for me in middle school. These memories don't erase what he did, but they are part of the whole picture. The real tragedy isn't only the assault, it's what he became. The slow decline in character that led to that night. The choices, both small and large, that turned a once protective older brother